20th century. Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, Richard Pearl, whose political alliance dates back some 30 years ago.
In my opinion, treason. The cabal of neoconservatives at PNAC, I think you all know what that is, who planned this war, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Libby, Pearl. This cabal knew the American people would not stand for a war against Iraq unless there was, as they put it in their own document, a new Pearl Harbor. 9/11 supplied that.
According to this theory, President Bush was not part of the original project, which coincidentally happened when he was out of town. Different elements seem to support this theory.
In the Booker Elementary School.
First of all, the fact that the Secret Service, who are in charge of the president's safety, allowed Bush to remain in the school for over half an hour after the second tower in New York had been hit.
The second plane is in the second tower.
At that point, the president had clearly become a possible target, and the duty of the Secret Service was to remove him immediately from a place where everybody knew he was at the time.
He was made aware that the first jet liner was struck.
However, no one seems to have worried about his safety, nor about the children at the school, or the school's personnel around him. It was as if someone within the Secret Service knew that the school was not going to be a target.
May God bless the victims, their families.
Furthermore, when Bush tried to get back to Washington, the White House gave warning that Air Force One was the next target, forcing the pilot of the presidential plane to a hurried, spectacular takeoff.
This is Air Force One departing Sarasota, Florida.
This is 907.
The journalists traveling with the president later commented, "It was like a rocket. For a good 10 minutes, it kept climbing almost vertically."
This is Ann Compton with a pool report. I am with the president.
As Bush was frantically trying to communicate with Dick Cheney, the lines with the White House kept cutting off. Frustrated, the president pounded on his desk, shouting, "This is inexcusable. Get me the vice president." After a stop in Louisiana, Air Force One landed in a military base in Nebraska. From here, the president and his staff were transferred to an underground bunker, where they remained locked up for the rest of the afternoon. After these multiple detours, President Bush was able to return to Washington only in the evening, when all the major decisions had already been made. It was later found that the threats to Air Force One never existed. Thus begins to form a picture of a president unaware of the facts, and somehow held hostage by the neocons who were effectively in charge throughout the whole day. At the White House was Vice President Cheney. At the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, and next to him his deputy, Paul Wolfowitz. It was Donald Rumsfeld who had just changed the hijacking intercept procedures in June 2001, even though no hijacking had taken place on American soil for almost 30 years. The new rules called for every critical decision to be routed directly through the Secretary of Defense's office. But for some reason, Donald Rumsfeld was hardly on hand the morning of September 11th, causing a substantial delay in the scrambling of jets that could have intercepted one or more hijacked planes.
And Rummy's Pentagon is the one that would then make the decision. Well, Rummy's Pentagon on American 11 didn't answer the phone. 90175 didn't answer the phone. I maintain they didn't answer the phone until they absolutely were embarrassed into answering the phone.
At the same time, it appears that Dick Cheney was constantly updated on the position of the plane approaching the Pentagon, even though its tracks had officially been lost, since it had diverted from the original flight path.
During the time that the airplane coming in to the Pentagon, there was a young man who would come in and say to the vice president, the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 30 miles out. And when it got down to the plane is 10 miles out, the young man also said to the vice president, do the orders still stand? And the vice president turned and whipped his neck around and said, "Of course the orders still stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary?"
We don't know what the order was, but we do know that it didn't stop the plane from reaching its target. All of this was happening between the White House and the Pentagon, far beyond President Bush's reach. This is what Michael Ledeen, one of the most influential neoconservatives, had to say about the presidency of George W. Bush.
All right, so he became president, but he didn't know why. And on September 11th, he discovered why.
Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated. I have a message for our military. Be ready.
But who are the neocons?